Hello and welcome, brothers and sisters of the multiverse. Today I want to talk about growing up. And I know it might seem dividing, maybe, but I think it's just true. In a way, you'll hear it. This time I wrote it down, so I'll talk faster than usual, than just thinking of how to say something. Let me know in the comments if that works better for you. Most people think they're free. They think they're free because they can vote or choose their job or choose their soft drinks. But real freedom, true freedom, isn't about what the system allows you to do. It's not about permission. It's about sovereignty, integrity. True sovereignty, the sovereignty of the soul, is the only one that matters. We are born free, all of us. But before we even can decide, we get adopted by the system. We get our name, we get our social security number and everything. No. We are never asked if we agree to any of those rules. And we grow up in it, and most of us can't even imagine it differently until a point in life, right? Where we start to ask some important questions. And that freedom, that's something nearly everyone on this planet is missing. Freedom as it's defined by society is managed delusion. The state doesn't grant you freedom. It grants you temporary permissions as long as you follow its rules. You're free to do whatever they deem appropriate. Want to own a house? You need to pay taxes. Want to start a business? You need permits. Want to speak your mind? Make sure it doesn't challenge the system too much. You're free to choose between the options they give you. But none of that is real freedom. It's just control with the label of choice. True freedom is when you can live without being ruled, without being coerced, without having to pay to exist. It's so hard for so many people, right? To even feel that freedom. They never did. If an animal grows up in the zoo, it can't imagine itself or its life to be different It's a whole another animal than those roaming free in nature. True freedom is about autonomy over your own life. And that's what we lost. What we've been taught to call freedom is just a system of control with a shiny wrapper. Most people don't get it. They can't see it. And the reason they can't see it is because they've been conditioned since birth to accept it. School system, parents, media, government, they teach you to obey, to confine in your mind the possibilities of endless into 2 or 3 acceptable ones. And anyone who tries to live outside the structure is either crazy or naive. Here's the thing. Cognitive dissonance is powerful and is a itch. When people realize they're not free, when they understand that the system is built to trap them, they can't handle it, so they reject it. They tell themselves, I'm free enough, I have rights. Those rights are granted, they're not inherent, and they can be taken away at any moment. They just have to be a perceived threat. And then there's martial law, and then you see how free you are. But real freedom isn't about comfort. It's not about being safe or protected. That's an illusion too anyway. It's about ownership of your life and responsibility for your choices. There's so many things that wouldn't hurt anyone else, and we are still not allowed to do them. How is that for my own protection? But that's how they sell us those, right? True freedom is messy. It's uncomfortable. It means standing outside the system. And that's why people don't get it. Because freedom requires courage. Not just to act, but to face the consequences of not complying. And most people aren't ready for that. So how do we help them break out of that? How do we help people dare to think for themselves? And the system has been so successful at locking them into this mindset. It starts with self-awareness. The first step is to recognize that they're not truly free. Just that little allowance of feeling it for a moment at least, to make the first little crack. Most people are sleepwalking through their lives, believing they're making choices when in reality they're just following scripts written for them by someone else. But once one realizes this, once they understand that everything is designed to keep you small, dependent, and afraid, that's when they start to wake up. If they're strong enough. to handle the truth. As positive as truth is, because you're free from illusion, the first reaction is to defend yourself from losing that illusion. Even though the truth stares you in the face, you reject it. No, I still want to believe in Santa Claus, because then I get the presents, right? What if that would be something socially acceptable that adult people still believe in Santa Claus? And you would be running around as an adult and just you wouldn't be able to stop shaking your head, right? But that's where we are. Those who see. The next step is to question everything. Everything. This might sound simple, but it's one of the hardest things to do. People are taught to take things for granted. They're taught to accept things as they are, to believe the system is just how it is. Because it's been this way for as long as they live. But true freedom comes from rejecting that passivity. You got to ask questions that they don't want you to ask. The uncomfortable ones. Like, why is it the way it is? Who benefits from us believing what we believe? And what would happen if you wouldn't follow those rules? Right? Simple questions. And it starts with why, of course. Why? If there is a road in the desert with a zebra and a stopping light, and you cross, you look left and you look right, but you don't cross over the zebra. Cross 10 feet further, and there is no car, no one else on the horizon. Why wouldn't you be able to cross on a red light? You're not endangering neither yourself nor anyone else. There is just no one. But in this system, if you don't waste your precious minutes on waiting on a green signal, even though there's no point of waiting, you're gonna be charged with a fine. I experienced that. There was no one 100 meters left and right, there was no one. And there weren't even any children around who I would have been a bad influence or something. None of that. But one of those just jumped out of a bush, I don't know where he came from, and saw me, and I had to pay a fine. Not endangering myself or anyone else. It's the law. That makes no sense, but and you would be surprised if you start to ask why. How many of those are senseless and just there to extract even more money from us? That's the machinery. Control and money and power. I never voted for that. I can conduct myself. If I would have seen a child that would have seen me crossing at red light, I wouldn't, of course, right? But there was none. So same thing with parkings, for example. The streets are built from our taxes, built by our hands, but we can't use them. We don't pay hourly, mostly overpriced. I mean, any price is overpriced because we paid it and we made it. How does that make sense that we have to pay again, just again? So many things are paid 5 times. Everything that is produced, think about that. The resource extractors have to pay taxes. The transport companies have to pay taxes. The manufacturing companies have to pay taxes. And triple and 5-fold and 10-fold, because even the gas of the transport company is taxed already. Taxes over taxes and over taxes, and then something that is actually free, extracted from Mother Earth, and would cost in labor time maybe $10. You pay for it $200 then in the shop, because taxes. The well-known legal theft of everyday life, right? Think about that. How do we open people's eyes to that? we who see that are kind of responsible, right, for the others. As those who see the truth. But it's not about preaching to them so they get automatic defense responses. And many of them don't even want to ever wake up because it's easier. So many things, not only laws and such, but even some established ways of interacting with each other, ways of thinking, ways of valuing. It permeates everything. And there are always those rationalizations, right? And those quick to grab worst case scenarios they argue with, right? Which are mostly total exceptions of the rule, how it would be. So we would have to address those, yes, but not confine the rest of us, the 98% or so. You know? But we can't force it. People would need to want to change. People would need to want to see. And what they see at first glance, if they would, is always, of course, negative, and it scares them. And then they're barked back into the herd. They don't see the long game negatives, the long game positives. They see the short game negatives. Most are just not ready to keep questioning beyond the point of that initial fear responses, and also see the options. See first where it holds them, but also then teach them to see what better options we would have in the long run. Starting with one, starting with just planting little seeds is often enough. That's why I made this video. I'll link it here. If you haven't watched it, the most important question is why? Why does it have to be this way? It just doesn't. Mostly it just doesn't. Could be different and it could be better for everyone. It just could. And it just isn't. And why? What are the rationalization of those who enforce law for that? For many of those. They start to speak of human nature, but in a Hobbesian way. That if they wouldn't rule us, we would all go nuts and crazy and kill each other for a slice of bread. Really? I mean, that's their rationalization. We couldn't conduct ourselves, we couldn't behave. And I mentioned this also. There are, meanwhile, thousands of eco-villages and intentional communities, and you never hear anything bad from them. All live peace and harmony and freedom and in joy, in fulfillment. You see those glitter in their eyes, that glitter that you don't see from anyone working in a boring office or assembly line or something. Their eyes are dead. There's no joy, there's no life. All these so-called bullshit jobs, right? David Graeber was it? I think. I mean, it's just old capitalistic system is just begging to be finally pronounced obsolete. The relic. When one wakes up to the fact that they're living under an illusion, the first reward is clarity. After the first fearful reaction, you always gain something even more valuable that is worth the so-called pain. Clarity for once, you know. Stop lying to yourself. Automatically, alone that step brings one from that Santa Claus believer to an adult. One stops living a life designed by others and begin to live according to truth, an old truth, to something that speaks from within you, not from above you, right? This isn't just some philosophical abstraction. It's a real psychological shift. Oh yeah. And when someone finally lets go of all the external expectations and stop pretending to be someone they're not, it's liberating. It's so liberating. feel like for the first time in your life you actually taking a breath. The moment of disillusionment is worth it, is working through it. It is the pain of loss, the loss of disillusionment, the loss of so-called innocence, of the easy belief, the systems that shielded you for your own protection, keeping you dependent. But we don't need their external validations. Never did. That is also something that is learned. Mostly in early childhood, because we're dependent on the adults, mostly parents, right? So we learn to keep them happy, to get food and shelter and love or something. It's a survival instinct, but it keeps growing, and then those so-called authorities we project onto teachers and bosses and government, all of that. It's still the same thinking out of fear of loss of security. But when that security is a cage, you actually do not have anything to lose. You can gain true freedom, true autonomy. Only from that can come true integrity, and maybe even true sovereignty. People who live under the system often feel like they're stuck in their job they hate, stuck in a relationship that drain them, stuck in a society that constantly demands more of them, and ever more and ever more. They're slaves to comfort, status, and fear. The incentive to risk all of that for freedom is the long-term reward of control over your lifetime that you can never buy back, no matter how many trillions you have. Your lifetime, your time of life never comes back. Every day, every second is ours. Not theirs. That's how it should be, at least. Our lifetime, our decisions, not incentivized through or no innuendos, no threat of violence if you don't comply. Our values. as long as we don't infringe our beliefs or something onto others and don't hurt anyone in the process, it's our freedom to exercise our will. Who of us who are bound by the system can tell his boss without consequences, I'm just not feeling like working today? Try it. No, don't try it. If your livelihood depends on it. But, you know, we all know. And what does that say? Do they own our time? Do they dictate our life? Where we should be? How long? What we should do when we're there? When we are even allowed to take a break? What we even are allowed to talk about when we're there and everything. How many of those things could we put together? Where's the freedom in that? Where's the joy in that? What is the meaning? Our meaning, our values, our wishes, our motivations, except for the paycheck that we depend upon, not wish it. No one wishes. No child is born and their first sentence is, I want my paycheck. What they truly want is love, connection, security, food, the basic stuff that doesn't cost money, it costs love, energy, materials, time to build something maybe, but it doesn't intrinsically cost money. That came later. That came with the Knights of the Cross, I think, or so. At least the modern monetary system. That just, when did you last see a flower in nature with a price tag? Just saying. Or does the sun have it? Does the soil have it? Does the rain have it? That is all we need. And here's another important factor. Real connection doesn't happen when you're pretending to be someone you're not. Most relationships are built on a kind of social facade, on doing what's expected, saying what's expected, and keeping the peace. That's why most friendships or romantic relationships, while they seem fulfilling on the surface, end up feeling hollow after a while. When you start living authentically, you start attracting people who truly resonate with your values. You get to build real connections, not based on convenience or superficiality. You may lose friends or family members who can't handle your changes. But the people who truly matter, the ones who are capable of seeing you for who you truly are and accept you as such, will be drawn to you. This is real community. This is true connection with other human beings, not just masks. It's not built on social expectations or obligations. It's based on mutual respect, shared values, and a deep understanding of one another. The incentive to risk everything for this is the potential to build relationships that are genuine, not bound by social norms or expectations. Not bound by some subtle mathematical evaluations of what can I get from the other person. How much do I have to give to get this and this? It's mostly subconscious, but you see sometimes when someone is used to you giving something that you give from your heart maybe, but then just stop, and then they get angry. Then you're suddenly a bad person, even if you never had the obligation to give it in the first place. I mean, people see other people very often, sadly, as commodities. That's not true anything. That's not real connection. Right? That can also be different. This might seem idealistic, but it's still true. Living authentically and encouraging others to do the same creates a ripple effect. When you live by your own principles, you challenge others to do the same. It is something else, right? You see in the eyes of those people when you just stand for what you believe. And everyone knows this in their heart, that it should be so, but rarely anyone does it. And then you do. And then you see that in their eyes, that they're inspired by that. Even if it costs you whatever. I may not be the best example in a certain value system, but and disclaimer here again, don't do anything I do, think for yourself, act upon your own beliefs and such, yada yada yada. But I often quit jobs or was fired just because I stood my ground and refused to participate in some actions that are hurtful to other people or nature or society at large. Many companies rationalize that away, and everyone feels it, or many do, and just looking around, saying nothing, and just swallow it and move on. I have to get that paycheck, I have to pay the bills. Me too. But it felt so good to say no. I'm out. That's my line. I couldn't live with myself if I did that for a paycheck. And I quickly found another job. Again, I'm not advocating that, but just maybe you experience someone like that. And I got mostly just positive feedback from my former colleagues privately. Something like, I wish I could do that too. I paid my share of prices for that. Oh yeah. It has a cost in the system. I just saw it in a way that I couldn't buy my soul back with that paycheck. But maybe that's just me. When you live by your own principles, you challenge the others to do the same. This is the only real path to changing the world. And people are no longer willing to play along with a broken system. You can't change the world unless you first change yourself. It's always the case. When you make that shift, others will start to question their own roles in the system. It's not about convincing everyone right now. It's about leading by example. One person choosing autonomy and freedom and integrity and sovereignty over his own soul that creates ripples. One person choosing to live without fear teaches others that they can do the same. You know, I was so inspired the first time I saw this short video of this guy who just went for groceries or something and encountered these tanks, and they just stood there with his bags and not letting a tank pass, right? What a powerful man, you know? Just, this is my street, this is not what I believe in, Violence is not the answer. Just let us live in peace. People, I would almost say, never choose war. Governments do that, not the people. But then through propaganda, right? And with incentives of paychecks and status or group belonging or patriotism or whatever BS, people start to see the necessity of that. And that happens to both sides. Even though in the first place, the people would have gotten along. Then the brainwashing begins from both sides, from the top. And suddenly we stop seeing the others as people. It never stops to amaze me how little it takes. I experienced that myself. The war in former Yugoslavia, right? Even weeks before the war, most people were still in that mindset of brotherhood and unity and stuff. Tito said, right? But only a few weeks of propaganda and one or two terror attacks and stuff, and boom, suddenly blood enemies. I bet the same thing happened with Ukraine and Russia and stuff. Most wars are like that. People don't choose that. Governments do. Then they have their whole litany of methods to convince the people to kill each other. For what? That's the ironic thing about the whole concept of adulthood. We are told that becoming an adult means getting the ability to make your own decisions, stand on your own feet, and live independently. But what we're really talking about is growing up, and growing up is about much more than just getting a job or hitting an age milestone. It's about facing hard truths, questioning everything, and owning the consequences of our choices. What we have in our modern world are adults in body, but often children in mind. People who are technically adults, 18 or 21, or whatever the legal age is, who still live like they're waiting for someone else to tell them what to do, how to think, what to believe, how to behave. Being an adult in this system doesn't automatically make you an adult in the true sense of the word. People are handed a set of expectations, a script for their life, and a few tools. Job, education, social conditioning, to survive within that system. They follow the script because they all know all they've been taught to believe. Because all they know is what they've been taught to believe. And the hardest thing to do is to step off that script and say, I don't have to play this game anymore. True adulthood means taking full responsibility for your life, including the hard truths and uncomfortable realities about the system, society, and your place in it. And the cog that you are in that. It means no longer hiding behind the excuses of I was just following orders, or this is how it's always been. It means only owning your choices and action. Knowing that your freedom comes with personal accountability. That's also a thing we lost by proclaiming God that sense of you can lie to people, you can lie to yourself, but you can't lie to God, so to say. Right? No matter how one twists the truth in his own head, God knows. You could have done differently. You could have said no. Of course it has a price, but he paid his, or Jesus did, or so they say, or whatever you believe. Socrates, right? I mentioned that too. He'd rather drank that poison than to sell his integrity. That's civil courage. That's backbone. That's soul sovereignty. If you put a price tag on that, what is your soul worth? And there, if you believe in there, all is known. There's no hiding, no rationalizing away anymore. And that's why the world would be better off if everyone would believe that. I'm not necessarily saying in the institutions, but in that how small the chances are, even purely mathematically, that this is just a coincidence. All of that, that no intelligence behind it. Perfect clockwork, perfect illusion of reality, that holographic universe. Physics, chemistry, all the circuits of life in nature. And now we're starting to figure out how the earth itself is alive. Finally acknowledging it. We know how plants communicate. In the air through chemicals, and under the earth through the mycelial networks. And we are part of that. It's not a dead thing to use. Plants, for example, if you cut one plant miles away, all other plants of the same species signal the same distress. They scream, so to say. Check that out. It's something that should be in the basic curriculums. You know, along that new realization or new proof. Realizations were there decades ago, or depends on what you interpret into that, thousands of years and forever. People are much more connected with nature in the past, except for the last few hundred years. Anyway, but here's the twist. Society doesn't actually want people to grow up in the true sense of the word. It needs compliant adults, people who obey, consume, and fit in. Adulthood, in the sense we've been taught, is more about survival in the system than it is about self-actualization or living authentically. People who are living authentically are disruptive. They're not easily controlled or manipulated. So the system keeps people from growing up by keeping them distracted with false ideas of success and comfort and gadgets and the endless pursuit of money, status, and the illusion of security. These are the adult milestones people chase, but often just forms of shackles. We are told comfort is the goal of adulthood, but comfort is the antithesis to true freedom. Comfort is the most it's like sloth, right? It's like one of the cardinal sins or something. Comfort. It's just another itch. Those who call themselves adult should act that way and not fall for that. What's easier to believe in? True adulthood is about confronting the unknown. It's about being willing to sacrifice comfort for truth, risking so-called security for integrity, and breaking free from groupthink. It's about standing tall when everyone around you is too scared to step outside their comfortable, predictable lives. It means facing your fear and choosing freedom despite the consequences. Most people are terrified to grow up because they're scared of what happens when they stop hiding behind comforting delusions of society. They're scared to let go of their sense of security, even if that security is built on an illusion. They're scared of disruption, the disruption that comes with questioning everything you've been taught, the disruption of standing apart from the crowd. In the end, growing up in a true sense requires courage to face reality and let go of false comforts. It's easy to live in the bubble of social norms and safety net of expectations. It's easier to cling to your job, your family, your friends, and your routines. All the things that validate your place in the world, even if they're making you miserable. How many people are clinging to that, are doing everything right, and are still miserable and depressed and burned out and all of that? So what does it say about the system and what you're told to believe? But that's not real adulthood. It's just a version of self-imposed slavery. When you decide to grow up, you decide to choose your own path. One that might not align with what everyone else is doing. One that requires risk, courage, and sacrifice. And yes, that means losing people along the way. It means walking away from so-called security for the sake of personal truth. The path to real adulthood isn't one size fits all. For some it might mean walking away from their job and taking a risk on something they believe in. For others it could be cutting toxic relationships or leaving a place that's holding them back. But whatever it is, it requires a radical shift in thinking, away from what's expected and toward what feels true. And people start questioning everything, not just the political system, but also their relationships, their choices, their values. They begin to grow. And that's when they start moving towards real adulthood. True adulthood is self-sovereignty. It's about owning the truth of who you are, even if the world around you doesn't like it. The reward for risking it all for truth, It's not just some abstract concept of freedom. It's peace of mind. When was it the last time you felt good making a decision or standing your ground and everyone else around you told you you were wrong? But you know where they're coming from. You just stop playing that game. The key is really to stop giving up what anyone thinks. Truly. Just standing there with that sometimes it's sadness of them not even knowing why they react, how they react, of them being so blind that you just can't show them. Sometimes it's even a grin of knowing, hey, have it your way. Have your own little slave cave. I'm out. It's the ability to go to sleep at night knowing that you're living authentically, not pretending to be someone you're not. It's waking up each day with purpose and clarity, without the weight of societal pressures crushing your spirit. So no, it's not easy. It's hard, at least in the beginning. But that's exactly why so few people do it. Because real adulthood doesn't come with the safety net. It comes with certainty that you can handle life on your own terms. Adulthood, real adulthood, it's not about playing by the rules. It's about breaking them when they just no longer serve you. And until people are ready to grow up in that sense, they'll continue to live in a world that demands conformity, comfort, and total lack of personal growth. The choice is theirs. Grow up and face the fear, or stay in the illusion of adulthood and keep playing the game of the system. The only real adult decision is to step out of that and choose freedom, integrity, soul sovereignty. What is more worth than that? Love you, brothers and sisters.